Hello, my friends. So today, I'd like to take you back in history to a better time, to 1876, to read an article from a newspaper called The True Witness and Catholic Chronicle, published on January 21st, 1876 in Montreal. This was a time when people were obviously more literate. I mean, just look at the words. Look at the number of words per page in this newspaper. It's amazing to think that this is the type of newspaper that people were getting back in the late 1800s. Those people sure were literate. They sure were intelligent. But even more importantly, they were open to discussing issues that are today unthinkable. And the issue of public discussion in this issue of the True Witness and Catholic Chronicle is what they call the Jewish conspiracy. The title of this article is The Jewish Conspiracy, Interesting German Pamphlet on the Jewish Origins and Character of Freemasonry. So without any further introduction, I will simply read the article. The Jewish Conspiracy, Interesting German Pamphlet on the Jewish Origins and Character of Masonry. The visit to India of the Prince of Wales, Grand Master of the English branch of Masons, has given spice to the following disclosures concerning the Masonic order, which are made in India by our admirable Catholic contemporaries in that country. They certainly are not blind to the tendencies of the age, and seeing, they speak out in exposure and condemnation. In one of them, the Catholic Examiner, contemporaneous with the Prince's cooperation in the Masonic celebration at Bombay, an invitation which Bishop Mervyn spurned with becoming dignity, we find the following exposition of the Jewish inspiration of Masonry in its war against the Catholic Church. Pertinent question. Already for several years, a strange movement has been going on in the German lodges against the Jewish Masons. From all that oozed out, an ugly part of the darkness in which Masonry necessarily keeps itself, has been brought to light, and gives an insight into the real tendency of that secret league, which even our common and honest Masons will be astonished to hear of. Whoever studies, even superficially, what is known as Freemasonry, must be struck at the number of Jewish expressions and reminiscences occurring in all that concerns the building of the Temple of Solomon. Richard Carlyle's Manual on Freemasonry gives ample proofs of an intense hatred of Christianity, such as characterizes at all times the wandering Jew, and which is the very soul of the higher degrees of that secret craft. Now the fact becomes more and more known that the unknown highest superiors, to whom Masons bind themselves blindly by the most formidable oaths, and whose commands they execute with blind obedience unworthy of a free man, are Jews and sworn enemies of Christianity, whose final object is to conquer the empire of the world by means of their enormous wealth, by establishing a universal Masonic republic, in which the Christian religion would be entirely uprooted and all nations made the footstool of Jehovah, that is, of the Jew. Carlyle teaches us that the original meaning of the name and distinction of a Jew was that of a wise and perfect man, by devotion to science. The word is of the same meaning as Jehovah. Literally, it is the man of God. The God of man, the Holy Ghost, or inspired spirit of man. We know that the highest superior in the Temple of Solomon is called Jehovah, in whom all Masonic wisdom, science, and perfection are embodied. Jehovah and Jew are synonymous in the Masonic jargon. Is it really true that Freemasonry is an attempt of the Jews to rebuild the Temple of Solomon in a higher sense, namely by establishing their name all over the whole world after hammering down all the thrones and altars? Is it really true that there are 2 lodges in London, from which issue the threads that direct all revolutionary societies in the world, and that into these 2 lodges no Christian has ever been received, nor ever been permitted to cross the threshold? Is it true that there are in the principal towns all over the continent and America exclusively Jewish lodges, which refuse admission to any Christian? Is it true that in the lodges secret Jewish societies exist with a peculiar aim of their own? We ask these questions because they contain assertions of the Freemasons themselves, and because, if they are to be affirmed, they give a clear explanation of the general revolution going on for centuries in the Christian world, and because they throw an immense light on the whole history of Europe since the time of the Crusades. Why Masonic secrets are revealed. Masons should not wonder that their secrets are revealed by their own adepts. Whoever has come to the conviction that he has committed a sin by swearing the Masonic oath, and that he commits another by keeping it, whenever the welfare and even the existence of throne and altar is at stake, does right and well to break the secrecy. We have before us the text of a pamphlet of 8 pages, which was printed as manuscript in the year 1862 by a B.R. Mason of Berlin, and of course communicated only to competent circles. We give in our next issue a translation of it, and remind our readers not to forget that it is a Freemason, and not ourselves, whose words they read. The German Pamphlet. The pamphlet, signed a Berlin Freemason, 1862, says, quote, "A sign of the times, bearing a seriously dangerous character, is to be found in the Berlin elections of the 28th of April and 6th of May, 1862. One element especially has come to the front, and exercised a powerful dissolving influence in all directions, namely the Jews. What, up to this time, ever since the Christian era began, has never been the case, is now presented to our view. The Jews at the head, as chiefs and principal agents in all revolutionary enterprises, by writings, words, and deeds, up to the building of barricades, for instance, in 1848 in Berlin. Regarding Berlin, we must ask, how is it that here 217 Jews have been elected special electors, and in 2 districts even exclusively Jews and not a single Christian? That Jews are honored and celebrated, for instance, Jacobi in Königsberg on his last birthday, more than even reigning princes? That in the press they talk just as if the people, or the nation, were composed of only Jews, and their followers, as if Christian subjects clinging still to monarchical principles, were no more existing at all? The answer to these questions is given by the agitating Freemasons, of whom B.R. Lamartine himself said that the revolutions of 1789, 1830, and 1848, and so on, have been got up by the Freemason League, a confession confirmed by B.R. Gardner Pages, minister of the French Republic, who openly declared in 1848, quote, that the French Revolution of 1848 is the triumph of the principles of the Freemason League, that in 1848 France has received the Masonic initiation, that 40,000 Freemasons in France have promised their assistance to complete the glorious work begun of establishing the Republic, and to extend to it and to extend it over the whole of Europe and over the whole world. Even the Prussian minister, Count von Haugwitz, one of the chiefs of Freemasonry, denounced the order of Freemasonry as the hiding place of all revolutions, assuring the monarchs of Europe assembled in the Congress at Verona in 1822 that all Masonic systems have one and the same aim: to govern the whole world, the thrones in their power and the monarchs their agents, that what began in 1788 and soon after broke out the French Revolution, the murder of the king, etc., had not only been decreed in the lodges, but also brought about by secret oaths and similar means, and the human race was more than ever threatened by this secret revolutionary power. In like manner did the celebrated and high-placed Prussian Freemason Baron von Kautwitz, in the year 1834, bring before King Friedrich Wilhelm III the gravest complaints against the Masonic order, that since more than half a century the leading men in school, church, and state proceeded from the lodges, that the mighty impulse given by the order of Masons to the mind of the people was directed in the first place toward the destruction of the religious foundation of our political life, that this criminal enterprise had received the seal of official authority and superior will, that the cry of the religious consciences had been ordered to be kept down, and that the dissensions and abominations appearing now are therefore to be attributed principally to Freemasonry. Just as a quick aside, these the Baron von Kautwitz and the Prussian minister Count von Haugwitz reminds me of how the last emperor of Germany as well was woke to the Judeo-Masonic conspiracy. What was his name? That last emperor. Wilhelm II. He was openly woke to the Judeo-Masonic question. So interesting how a lot of old German nobility knew about this. Where this is hard to read. Where these voices are not listened to, results of public opinion, such as we see now before us, are easily accounted for. As to Berlin, we see that all 9 deputies are Freemasons. Among the 1703 electors of the 4 districts, there were no fewer than 1,292 Freemasons, belonging to the 23 Berlin lodges, each with 33 degrees and their respective field of work. The same proportion exists in Breslau, Magdeburg, Stettin, and in all towns where lodges furnish and Freemasons abound. Well, I think my son is awake. My wife's going to get him. That is why they wrote in Latomia, a secret Masonic journal, quote, "Our league, wherever it flourishes, has become a power against which nobody can prevail, and which will triumph over all obstacles and adversaries. Oh, would that those noble and honorable men among Freemasons, whom the most exquisite system of hypocrisy knows to deceive and to use as a protecting cover, began at last to open their eyes. But let them remember that there is also a secret reception, so that of many it is unknown to the great Masonic brotherhood that they belong to the craft. They are thus enabled to serve the revolution openly without compromising the craft." Jewish boasts. The crown to all this is the political revolutionary Masonic power of the Jews, according to the words of the Jewish Masonic chief J. Weil in a secret writing. Quote, "We exercise a mighty influence on the movement of our times and the progress of civilization toward republicanizing all peoples." And another Masonic chief, the Jew Louis Bourne, says in the same writing, quote, "We shook with a mighty hand the pillars on which the old edifice rested, so that they groaned. Yes, it is in the blank, the line is lost. This state of things has, since 1862, grown only worse in Berlin, and the Jews number already 1/2 of the municipal corporation, so that Berlin may be truly called the capital of the Jews. The attitude taken by the Neapolitan officers in the last revolution, 1860, is inexplicable to everyone who does not know Freemasonry. All officers are bound by double oaths. They had to obey the Masonic superiors under pain of death by the dagger, even in the open street, where the murderer is always sure to escape by the help of his Masonic brethren posted in the vicinity. The modern remedy for the punishment incurred on account of treason against the sovereign is political amnesty. In Prussia, very few officers belonging to the nobility have entered the lodges, and that is why they are the object of continual Masonic attacks. The methods used by the lodges have not changed since Louis XVI fell their victim. Gerson Moreno, sorry, the text is hard to read here, president of Ecuador, is the newest instance. When Serafin Vanutel, the former apostolic delegate of Ecuador, took leave of the president to join his new post of something in Belgium, Garcia Moreno told him that he had just received the news that in a meeting at Lima of the Freemasons of Peru, the president's death had been decreed. Vanutelli had not yet reached Rome when the telegraph broke news that this decree of the lodge had been executed. On another occasion we shall draw the distinction between the Brotherhood and the Order of Freemasons. For the present, it suffices to say that the Brotherhood has not even its place within the Temple of Solomon, but only under the porch or the vestibule. Masonic halls under which the cover of secrecy noble souls of all classes taught and realized the principles which in profane society would be prohibited as heresies and criminal innovations. And another Jew, Mendizabal, the soul of the revolution in Portugal in 1820, effected the taking of Oporto and Lisbon, and carried in 1830, by his mighty Masonic influence on the junta, the revolution into Spain, where he became prime minister. The dangers for throne and altar arising from the power which the Jews have obtained within the Masonic craft have risen to the highest point, and it is time to raise the voice against them, as we did some time ago, conscious of the pressing danger. The heads of German Freemasonry to the German lodges. The Jews understand well that the royal art of Freemasonry, i.e., the art of becoming kings, was capital means to establish firmly their own esoteric reign. The golden key which opens servile hearts and ears had since long been proved most efficient in their hands, but now they gained even a solid basis for their machinations. 1,000 new communications were open to them, and they found themselves in possession of a secret center for communications and observations. The danger from this side threatens, however, not only our order, but the states in general, and we wish, therefore, to raise our voices so loud as to rouse even the most unconcerned out of this indifference. How great this danger is, since 1848, daily proved by new facts. Whosoever moves daily in different spheres of the people, and has their occasion to observe the doings of Jews, knows also that each Jew who talks politics, be he young or old, rich or poor, acts as a republican emissary. For he understands clearly that in a monarchy he can never remain for a long period at the head. He, therefore, works with a passion and rage which reminds one of the curse which they have loaded upon their generation at the time of the condemnation of the Savior, and under the load of which they rush now towards a new terrible divine judgment. Now that they repeat against Christ, living in the new order of the world, their old cry of "Crucify him, crucify him." A still greater gain falls to the lot of the Jews by a peculiar arrangement in a certain Masonic system, in which 3 Masons have the power to create another Mason, and the right to communicate the Masonic mysteries even outside the lodges and without the prescribed rite. The Jews belonging to this system are thereby enabled to propagate formal Masonry among their own people, be it for money, be it for other purposes, and thus to introduce into our order as great a number of their rabble as they think proper and advantageous to themselves. The disadvantages accruing therefrom to our institute, to the good name of true Masons, and to humanity itself are incalculable. In the lodges, they find many opportunities to practice on a large scale their well-developed system of corruption and to bring confusion into numbers of affairs. The future of Jewish empire. How dangerous must the influence of the Jews on Masonic enterprises appear when the active part is remembered, which this people took in the crimes of the French Revolution and of the Corsican usurper, when the steadiness is considered with which they cling to the belief in a future Jewish empire of the world, and when the immense influence is known which Jewish gold exercises on so many ministers of the state. The Jewish people form a caste in hostile opposition to the whole human race, and the God of Israel has only one chosen people, to whom all other peoples have to be given as a footstool. Innumerable examples prove that by means of their money, The Jews have their spies even in the most secret and highest consultations. We have only to remember many facts that happened here in Berlin since 1848. Now consider the 600,000 Jews. According to the newest statistics, they are only half that number. Among the 17 million inhabitants in Prussia, consider the convulsive zeal of this nation in its inexhaustible oriental vivacity. How they labor to get into their hands all possible means for revolutionizing the state, to occupy by great financial associations even in the higher educational establishment, and to monopolize for themselves the governmental posts. Consider also the insurmountable repugnance of those avaricious money dealers against all manual labor. Observe lastly the opposition felt since long by our artisans from the pressure of Jewish speculation, and then ask how heavily will weigh the iron chains upon those who eat their bread in the sweat of their brows. The, quote, Oriental nobility. To enter into the mass of the people, this the Jew refuses. He does so only into the class of the gentry. The Jews want to become the German nation, the Oriental nobility, or want to become to the German nation the Oriental nobility. They want to rule over us as ministers, as presidents, as governors, as officers, as mayors, but by no means to increase or to relieve the number of the working people. There exists in Germany a secret union with Masonic forms, placed under unknown superiors and working not for Masonic aims. The members of this league are almost all Jews. They work in degrees and systems with only apparently Masonic Christian rites and Masonic Christian symbols. The Jews thus make use of Christianity, in the Masonic sense, either for ridicule's sake or as a cover for secret aims and intrigues, which are equally contrary to Freemasonry and dangerous to the states. Every sincere Freemason and every government must therefore carefully try to prevent the Jews from making use of the Christian Masonic rites and institutions for other than Masonic purposes. Do not despise our warning in these dangerous times. There is not now question of ridiculous calumnies, which only stupid people believe in, but of an unheard of and most impudent fraud, which abuses the most holy things of the Freemasons. Those criminals do no more lurk in darkness, but they appear publicly as our brethren and boast of the protection and fraternity of German princes. This Jew, Mendizábal, promised a minister a restoration of the sunken Spanish finances, but in a very short time the result of his manipulations was a terrible increase of the national debts of that unhappy country, and a great decrease of its revenues, whilst he and his friends had grown immensely rich. For this increase of their private fortune, they had found a golden opportunity in the sale of 900 religious and charitable Christian institutions, which the Spanish Cortes, at the proposition of the Jews, had declared national property. Ecclesiastical property was dealt with in the most shocking manner, and impudent derision of the people's religious and national feelings went so far that Mendizábal's mistress ventured to wear publicly a beautiful and precious necklace, which, but a short time before, had been an ornament to a statue of the Blessed Virgin Mary in one of the Madrid churches. We shall soon have occasion to speak of the relations between the Jewish banker Bleichroder and Prince Bismarck, lately revealed by the ultra-Prussian Kreiszeitung, of the greatest dismay of the whole Prussian ministry. Sit thou at my right hand until I make thy enemies thy footstool. The Lord will send forth the scepter of thy power out of Zion. Rule thou in the midst of thy enemies. The Lord at thy right hand hath broken kings in the day of his wrath. Psalm 109. The Jews form a Masonic state in Masonry, in the same manner as Masonry forms a state in the state. One more column here. Thus far the superiors of the German Freemasons. Some other questions. On a mature deliberation of this, we ask, if the Jew Mendezabal, after directing, as provincial Grand Master of all Spanish and Portuguese Freemasons, 2 revolutions in those 2 countries in 1812 or 1820 and 1830, became president of the Spanish ministry, if the Jewish Grand Master Crémieux became Minister of Justice in the French Republic of 1848 and again in 1870 and 1871, if the Hungarian Provincial Grand Master Kossuth became ruler of Hungary, if the Italian Grand Masters Cavour, Garibaldi, Mazzini, Victor Emmanuel, etc. are the chiefs of the Italian Revolution, if von Bennigsen of Hanover directs as Provincial Grand Master of the German Eclectic Freemason League, the German National Alliance, for obtaining a German parliament, and impudently offends his king in his ministries, von Boris, especially since the king has joined his lodge. If Verhagen, the Provincial Grand Master of Belgium, established already in 1854 on the Feast of St. John in the Grand Lodge of Brussels as a new principle that, quote, the old law, be loyal to your king, is no more acknowledged as a Masonic principle, but is to be abandoned as incompatible with the present views of Freemasonry. If the Provincial Grand Master Fichte, whose triumph the German revolutionary power celebrated on the 19th of May, 1862, puts the crown on all we have said by his prophecy of the German Republic of the 19th century. If we ask, in consideration of all this, whether the monarchs of Germany, who desire to preserve their thrones to their families and peace to their peoples, will not at last begin to distrust a league which 200 millions of Catholics justly fear as the greatest enemy of throne and altar. We do so in remembrance of King Louis XVI, who, on hearing his sentence of death read to him, exclaimed, quote, all this I knew already 11 years ago. How is it that I did not believe it? And in remembrance of the Berlin Grand Master Union, who some time ago openly explained to our present king that modern history furnishes numerous warning examples in which, under the cloak of Freemasonry, aims dangerous to the state and criminal are pursued. Jewish lodges closed to Christians. To this must be added a circumstance very little known, that the Jews, who were from time to time excluded from several lodges, are now received in all lodges of the world, also in Prussia, except in Berlin, where in the face of the royal house Freemasonry has to show a Christian tendency. However, by the help of a high personage near the throne, who frequently found with the Jew Lossing, the Jews succeeded, after the death of King Friedrich Wilhelm IV, in entering the Berlin lodges by a back door, inasmuch as they were allowed to enter in the case that they had already been received in some other place. But whilst no Christian lodge is now inaccessible to the Jews, there are Jewish lodges to which Christians are under no condition admitted. In London, where the real focus of revolution under the Grand Master Palmerston exists, there are 2 Jewish lodges in which no Christian is ever received, or even permitted to pass the threshold. Into these run the threads of all revolutionary elements that are to be found in Christian lodges. From there the other lodges are directed. as by the secret superiors, so that most of the Christian revolutionists are blind puppets of the Jews. And this is done by means of secrecy, under the pretext that in the lodges everything is a secret. The knowing brethren direct all Freemasons toward their own end. During the Leipzig annual fair, a Jewish lodge is permanent in that town, which, strange to say, is never opened to any Christian Freemason. On learning this, many Freemasons open their eyes, but the power of secrecy and of the oath, and the practice that a Mason of a certain degree is not allowed to speak of the labors on his field with a Mason of another degree, not even by pantomime, as the oath says, keeps every member of Freemasonry as if it were in a dark cellar, where he feels himself shoved and lifted up, but unable to make use of his intellectual powers otherwise than the like of one who is bound and fettered on all sides. To the Jewish lodges at Frankfurt and Hamburg, only emissaries have access. The name of the latter, Absalom, to the Three Nettles, betray his high political burning tendency. Nomen est omen. May the All-Merciful alleviate the heavy trials which are threatening the heads of the nobles and princes in consequence of their indulgence and unwariness with regard to the real hypocrites. May he enlighten them and clearly show them the tendency of the secret revolutionary working of Freemasonry for republicanizing all people in the interests of the Jews. May they remember the prophetic words of Napoleon I, quote, "In 50 years Europe will be a republic," and those of Burke, "A time will come when the princes will be forced to become tyrants, because their subjects have become rebels on principle." And that concludes the reading of The Jewish Conspiracy, interesting German pamphlet on the Jewish origin and character of Masonry, from The True Witness and Catholic Chronicle, January 21st, 1876. Thank you for watching.